Thank you for tuning in to The Arts in Business, a podcast that explores how artistic sensibilities can positively impact the business world. I am Sebastian Grube, an artist, entrepreneur, and communications professional who aims to build a more compassionate world through amplifying voices. I am also the founder of Beyond Comms, a communications agency that unearths and amplifies the stories that inspire founders to build sustainable and impactful businesses. So let's dive in. Hello, listeners. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I have Noura Ali-Ramahi, an Emirati artist based in Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates. And she recently showed her solo exhibition, Allow Me Not to Explain, at the Project Space at NYU Abu Dhabi. Her work has been featured in solo and group exhibitions across the UAE, and she earned a bachelor's degree in business administration from the American University of Beirut. I know Noura from my work with NYU Abu Dhabi, where she supports the Arts Center at NYU AD on their advisory circle. And she also works as a learning and development professional with Tawazun Council. The council is the UAE Defense and Security Acquisitions Authority for the UAE Armed Forces and Abu Dhabi Police. So I'm super excited to dive into her artistry, the sensibilities she has gained, and how they connect across her artistic and professional practices. Noura, thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here. Happy to be
Amazing.
here.
So the first question I start with is, did you bring a vessel and a beverage of choice?
I did. It's my water with orange blossom extract.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I brought a blue mug. It has a little coral inside. Actually, you can't see it, but it's red. It's handmade. I found this in Istanbul, actually, in Turkey, and so none of the cups are the same size and the same shape, which is kind of really cool.
That's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. Unique.
Yes, you're a prolific artist. You work across a variety of mediums in the visual arts. And I also read in one of the recent interviews that you gave that your family has arts practices. I think your father and your sister are poets, your mother paints, and uncle, I believe. So tell our listeners a little bit about how you came to your artistic practice, because you also then studied business administration, which is kind of a completely different direction.
It is absolutely different. So, I mean, art is part of the family. As you mentioned, my father's always been writing poetry. My mother picked up painting actually when we moved to the UAE way back in 1989. Her brother, my uncle, is probably the first introduction I ever had to anything called art. Like, I think my very first experience was actually looking at a painting or seeing someone and actually meeting the artist. That was him. And I think in a way, he's been a very big influence in a very subtle, indirect way. But yeah, like my earliest experience is experiencing his art. But none of them took it as professionally. My uncle painted for himself. My mom painted for herself until I'm the one who put together an exhibition and we showed her work together. So we've always looked at this as a hobby. I mean, I don't know if it's like my generation. I don't want to sound too old, but like pursuing art wasn't something that was very popular or really encouraged. So yeah, when I chose to study something, I studied business, because it can get me a job. But the art thing was always there in parallel somehow, in the background, the fun thing, the hobby, this thing I play around with every once in a while. Same thing for my mom, same thing for my uncle. It's like it's something we tap into when we're trying to express something on certain occasions. So yeah.
So let me
That's how
ask
it
you,
is.
would you now describe yourself as a professional artist?
Oh, I have a hard time actually describing myself as an artist. So to put the word professional before it is even harder. I don't know. I feel like this kind of not label, but this kind of attribute needs to be given to me by someone else. I don't know. I really have a hard time. I have used the word, I don't use it comfortably. When I'm introducing myself, I like to say, yeah, you know, I'm an artist. I say it with a bit of hesitation, not because I don't feel it. It's just I feel like I'm proclaiming something that may not be true if received by everybody. You know what I mean? So professional, no. I'm an aspiring artist, I would say. No, I don't think I don't know if there is such a thing, professional. I mean, yes, I don't pursue it solely. I do have a job, as you mentioned, but it's a calling. It's like an ongoing calling that I follow
Yeah.
wherever it leads. Does that
Right.
make any sense? I don't know.
No, it does. It makes total sense. I mean,
It's
because
how I feel.
yeah, and I think that's for me in all of like the way that when I've explored my identity and because I studied the arts, I mean I did an undergraduate degree in music and theater, so I wanted in my mind I was gonna become an artist. And I would still describe myself, I would define myself as an artist, which is something that I've worked really hard to within myself to be able to comfortably say without the pressure of the production that comes with that, like having to produce
Mm,
work all the time or you know show that you're an artist, I think. So but as I started to continue to think about that, and I wrote about this in one of the articles for my newsletter. I There is a difference for me between being an artist and being a professional artist, and I think for me, putting the word professional in front of it means you're doing it almost like a job, because then your
mm,
livelihood depends on it, your income can
yeah,
depend on it. So I like
yeah,
asking that question to see,
yeah. So no,
yeah,
I'm not a professional artist.
as per that definition, yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
No.
but the what you said, art as a calling, it really shines through with how you started describing it, because it's always been there. It's always been
Mm,
peripheral and part of your practice. So
yeah.
that's an interesting thought, an interesting kind of definition. Um, which leads me to that next question, which is then
Mhm.
when you hear artistic sensibilities, what does that mean to you?
I actually made some notes yesterday. Do you mind if
No, of
because
course not.
you know, when I read through some of the questions, I thought I don't want to forget this because it's very important. So I wrote, observe things deeply, feel things deeply, not afraid or inhibited to be in awe of things, even little things. So your mind sees the world not for what it is, but its potential and what it can be and what ideas it can spark. Yani. And I feel like for me, these sensibilities means that in my head, I'm constantly creating things, you know, as I gaze on this world. I read an article in the Muhammad Ahmed Brahim book that was recently released
Mm,
on the occasion of the Biennale exhibition that he's doing in Venice. And uh, one phrase stuck out. It's that artists gaze at the world and then they tell us what they saw.
mm,
I don't know. This for me is a huge part of artistic sensibility. Me as a person, as an artist myself, you know, and you have the need to translate what you see. So you gaze deeply. You're constantly creating something. You're seeing beyond what you're actually seeing, and then you want to show what you saw to people through your art. So it's a huge form of expression of capturing a specific moment, living it again, and by doing that, you live it more deeply and more profoundly.
mm, mm.
That's my
Capturing.
very long definition of sensibility.
No, I love that. I love that. It was almost like a little poem, honestly, the way you read it. It was
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I love poetry. I love writing poetry. So yes, when you ask that question, it's true because it's something that's very, very important for me,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and it's, you know, since art became much less peripheral for me in the past few years, since like I would say 2015, when I decided to actually hold my first exhibition and I started planning for it. it's something that's intertwined in everything I do, pretty much, to varying degrees, So on my morning walks, which are my ritual, they're part of my art process, you could say. That's when the sensibilities are heightened, because it's where I'm walking, I'm in my mind with the trees and the birds. And even if it's like 1 billion degrees outside in Abu Dhabi and it's humid, it's there. I'm feeling a lot of things, and I write down poems sometimes, and I'm constantly translating what I'm seeing right there on the walk. But then throughout different parts of the day, it's bits of conversation that spark up that sensibility. It's a little thing that I might read. It's something that a child of mine can say, or something I see on TV, or a picture, or whatever. And so they start to spring up, that sensibility. It's like a radar almost, and sometimes it's on full alert, and sometimes it's just still there scanning in the background for something, storing information to be retrieved later on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the beautiful thing about artistic sensibilities. It's even if you're not consciously engaging with them, they're always there. If you're engaging with an artistic practice, it's always in the background, and it kind of informs your interactions or the way you see the world or interact with the people that you're around. And that's why I love doing this podcast and talking to people like you, because I want to bring that conversation a little bit more alive, because I don't think we're having that conversation a lot. Yeah. I want to take your definition a little bit apart and dive into two parts,
Sure.
especially. So the gazing deeply and observing deeply. Describe to me what the deeply means. What is the significance of that deeply, rather than just gazing, observing, or feeling?
When I walk, and again, I'm going to talk a lot about my walking, because that's so I'm sorry if it's repetitive, but it's very, it's part of my life. I walk pretty much in the same place every morning. Yeah. So I live near a golf course. And so I wake up super early, between 5 and 6. Sometimes most of the time there's no light even outside. And I take pretty much the same route. Yeah. I trespass all over the golf course before it opens. Everybody there knows me, so they don't stop me, even the security. But walking through the same place every single day, you'd think that it might get boring, or it's like, okay, what am I looking at today? But that's not the case. This is where the sensibility comes in, where the gazing. There's always something new to find. The bare minimum, there's the sunrise. There's the sunrise, and there's this transition between the darkness and the light. And every day it's different. There are no 2 days that are the same. And so for someone who maybe doesn't have or hasn't thought about that sensibility, they could just say, oh, it's another sunrise. Oh, the sun's up. Oh, the light is coming through the tree. But for me, I'm waiting for it. I'm anticipating it. I'm excited by the idea that, okay, I'm so glad I got up early and I walked and I get to witness the sun coming up. That's the deeply. It's not something I take for granted. It's something that every day sparks this feeling where I want to just stand there and sigh. And I've taken 1 billion pictures of the sunrise or the sunset or the sun in general, or light. And it still amazes me. That's because I feel it. I feel it. It touches me. It makes me want to write. It makes me want to come back home and draw something. It makes me want to go back every day to see it again and again. This is deeply. I see the bird. There's a specific bird that, I got to know a lot of birds, and I now recognize them by their voice even, And there's a bluebird. There's a turquoise bird there. It has the ugliest voice, right? It sounds like it's coughing. It constantly sounds like it has COVID, really. Oh. But when I hear it, I actually go and seek it. I want to see that bluebird, because once it flies, it has the most amazing turquoise blue wings. And blue turquoise is my favorite color. And I just want to look at it, because just appreciating its beauty, taking a moment to actually appreciate the beauty of something, to be if I want to take it even further to the whole mindfulness thing, to be grateful, to be in the moment, that's what it means to gaze deeply and to see deeply.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. And yeah, it's this idea of just looking again and again and again. Even if you're looking at the same thing, you will discover new details, texturally maybe, but also for yourself. And I think that's the other part of sensibilities. It's not just about, it's really engaging all of your senses. So exactly what you were saying, you're feeling it, you're receiving the sunrise, you're receiving the bird and the turquoise of and the color of that bird, and you're observing how your state changes. I mean, it is veering into mindfulness, but I think it's an important part of that conversation too. It is really it requires self-reflection for you to understand, to see how is this experience affecting me, and how is the sunrise today that might look like the one yesterday affecting me in my state today. Maybe I didn't sleep well enough, or I had a really kind of tumultuous evening, and I'm working through that with the sunrise. I love that,
Yeah.
gazing deeply. Yeah.
And it's not just about how I feel. I almost feel like I want to transmit it to people.
Mm.
That's even
Mm-hmm.
taking it to another level when you're feeling something so deeply, and I feel the need to write about it, and I write something about it and I share it. And so it sparks something in another person. So that's, where you start
Yeah.
spreading these feelings and ideas. So
And
yeah,
that,
but it starts
yeah,
inside.
it starts inside. But that brings me to the second part that I wanted to dive deeper into, which is, you said living it again. And I think that is that sharing with other people. So tell us a little bit more about, what does that mean for you, living it again, in that sense of artistic sensibilities?
When so when something really inspires me in that moment, and spontaneously, I write so much on my phone. I use my notes. So all my poems are on my phone. Um, so I start to write as I'm walking, and my sister is usually the poet. Is usually the first person who will receive it. She's kind of like my first critic. You know what I mean? I like to see her response and anticipating the response, and then getting that positive response, like when she says, "Oh, I felt that. Oh, that's, I like the imagery," or "That felt so deep," or then it's my father and my mother, and then I might post it, on my Instagram, and then people react to it. You get a little heart here. Oh, that's beautiful. It's nice. It's, you maybe somebody's sitting in an office somewhere, or they're stuck, or whatever. They took a moment to read something that I wrote, and it affected them, and affected them enough to respond to something, to say, "Oh, that was cool," or not, or just, having read it. Um, yeah, it captures it, and then I read it again. I like to read over the stuff that I've written before, just to see its impact. If it still impacts me, I'm satisfied with it.
Mm.
I don't edit. I don't edit what I write. I might remove a little a or the here and there, but I never rewrite, because I feel like that would be like applying a filter to a picture. You know,
Ah.
if
Yeah.
I mean, this is how I felt in this moment. If I wrote this poem using these words, this is how it felt to me at that moment. To go back and edit it, except if I might get stuck on a word. There's something that this is not capturing it correctly. I might find the word afterwards and say, "Oh yes, that was it. Yes, fine. I can do that." But to edit and try to like embellish and add filters to the
Mm.
word, I don't like to do that. Now that's just poetry. When I come back home, it could be that I suddenly feel like drawing or painting or using a certain color. And again, this is a much more abstract form of expression, but it's there, and I'm capturing it, and I'm putting it, and I'm gonna look at it again, and it's gonna bring back a certain moment, or a certain source of inspiration, or a certain mood, or it's a phase. It could be over a period of months or whatever. This is what I mean by reliving it. It's captured and it's there.
Mm.
I interpret it the way I felt it, but other people can see it in their own way, with their own filters and sensibilities and
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah, there's so much. I feel like there's such a big learning in there too, because when I started to create, and in my context right now, maybe I would call it creating content, but there is this constant need to edit yourself and to think about how is this going to perceived, and is it going to perceive the way
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be perceived, you know? And then you go
Mm-hmm.
into this loop of editing and editing and making sure that it's supposed to be the way you mean it to be. But there's something so beautiful in the rawness that you're describing, of just owning the moment and saying, this is how I felt, this is my experience, and maybe you share it with people, maybe you don't, but it is that. And I think I'm coming to realize that too, with the writings that I'm doing, and just other things that I'm creating, is we need to take that away a little bit. Like, I get bogged down by that if I think about it too much, and I just need to say, no, this is my voice, this is my opinion, so I'm just going to put it out there and see what comes back. And I think that it
Yeah.
can be so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, this is why the exhibition that just closed at NYU last week, Allow Me Not to Explain, it didn't just come out of nowhere. It's for a year or so, I was working on this certain body of work, drawings and paintings and etc. And I'm having conversations with a close friend of mine who's kind of an unofficial advisor of mine when it comes to art. I just like my sounding board. And I'm saying, okay, if I were to show this, I don't know how to explain it. What's the label I'm going to put on it? How do I explain it? Do I need to impose an explanation just to make it sound like it's artsy so that it fits, in the gallery language, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it was actually on a walk. And after having debating things, okay, is it about meditation? Do I say that this is about mental health? Because now it's like this the big hot issue. Should I link this big hot issue to this
Mhm.
work of mine? Maybe it'll, resonate
Mhm.
more with people, or it's like the in thing. But it felt fake. I really couldn't. I couldn't even write 2 words about it. It just felt imposed and unreal. And so again, on one of my walks, um, I wrote, Allow Me Not to Explain, like ALLOW. And I started writing this acrostic poem about Allow Me Not to Explain. And I thought, and after finishing it, I thought, maybe that's the title of my next exhibition. Sort of like Seinfeld, did you know Seinfeld, the series,
Yeah. Yeah.
where he says like, this show is about nothing? It's
Mm.
nothing. It's about nothing. It's about nothing, but it's about everything. So rather than, so again, this is just one form of of trying not to edit too much, not to filter too much, not to judge, not to assign something that's fake. Art
Mm.
has to be really pure and honest. Otherwise, it'll be presumptuous.
Yeah.
People will feel it. People will
Yeah.
feel it. I didn't want it to be like that. This is what I did. That's it. Take it,
Yeah.
leave it.
It reminds me, I mean, this is completely like off our topic, but I keep
Yeah.
getting, because of the marketing consultancy that I have now, I keep getting the marketing content on my social media platforms. And the people always tell you, follow the trends, like use this audio on your video. And that, which is actually not true. There's so many other videos about, if you're a brand or if you're a person, stay true to yourself. So create the content that you want to create because it's meaningful to you and your community, and don't chase the hot topics. Don't
Mm-hmm.
attach that to your name. If it makes sense, then yes, but don't build your brand, don't build your company based on that. And I think that's something that, for me, it is rooted in arts and artistic sensibilities, because artists are themselves. Like, you have to understand yourself and you have to own yourself. And if you want to be successful and you want to your community and your viewers to respond to you, you need to be truthful and authentic. And so thank you for sharing that. And I just wanted to draw that connection because it reminded me of that. And yeah, and this is the point of the podcast, bringing things together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So in that vein, um Tell us about your work with Tawazun Council as a learning and development professional.
My background is business. And my first job was building these like financial models and financial analysis and all that. And then when I left that job, I started doing some consulting work with Tawazun in terms of delivering training. So I was a trainer for a long time. And so by being a trainer, I automatically fell into like the learning and development. And then with time, I stopped doing the training, but now I just organize the learning and development programs. So it's work that allows me enough balance to pursue the art side of things. You know, it's a rewarding job in itself, but it doesn't take over my whole life in a way that, you know, like, oh my God, I don't have time for this, or I don't have. So this is one of the best things about being able to work with this organization.
Yeah. And without going into too much detail, of course, are there moments where your artistic sensibilities show up in that professional work?
Absolutely. I mean, I was privileged to actually be asked to do some artworks for the company. It was 5 years ago, almost, for Commemoration Day, which is coming up
Yes,
in just a
tomorrow.
couple of days.
Yeah.
So I did a triptych with the logo of the Commemoration Day, using my own little, you know, my color technique, or like my signature pattern. And so it's, you know, proudly hanging in the organization. But not only that, I mean, in my office, it was almost like a mini studio. Over time, it became a studio because I have, you know, I bring with me markers, colors, Sharpies, and, you know, one of the things you might know about me is that I like to reuse material. So like my last exhibition was all made with like recycled packaging material. I don't throw away bottles. I don't throw away plastic bags. And so I started collecting plastic bottles and I painted on them during my break. You know, some people doodle. Everybody doodles when you're waiting on a call or whatever. So I doodled on these plastic bottles. And so similar to the shelf you see behind me, I have these 2 shelves in the office, and they were just stacked with colored bottles, almost like an exhibition, a permanent exhibition full of color. And so anytime I had a meeting in my office, we would have to spend at least 10 minutes talking about the bottles. Most people forgot what they came to see me for, but it's, you know, so I almost created a little environment that allowed me to just release some of those like, creative moments of just to be spontaneous and just to recreate that world, because that world allows me to think a bit more openly about things. It doesn't have to be only about art. It can be also in my job. It just, you know, you see things from a different perspective. You're a bit more open to new ideas. So the surrounding makes a difference. And that's how I kind of created my own little mini studio at work.
I love that. How
Yeah.
has that changed the people who come into your office for those meetings? Do you observe a change there, or what is the difference?
The best change or response I get is when people actually come to me and say, look what I did, and they'll show me a little bottle they did, or they see that I had a little drawing and they're like, oh look, you know, we made one of, and I actually have them in my office. And so to, even if it's one person, you know, having a little impact on one person, getting them to, you know, do a little bit something artistic, or to release something, or to just try something new, it's just awesome. I've done some like mindful coloring sessions. Again, so these are ideas just because, you know, there are ideas that come out when your mind is free and it's flowing and it's smooth and you're coloring. And, you know, people came up to me and they're like, Noura, we haven't colored, I think, since we were in grade 7 or 6 or whatever it is, you know? So this is, I guess, my way of giving people a little bit, not imposing it. You can't impose it on someone, but if you just put the right setting, simple thing, a little table, you know, a few, you know, drawings, few pens, and just sit and color, a little bit of classical music, it brings out something in people. Then there's almost surprised, like, yeah, why don't I do this by myself? Why, I should do this more often. And if they do, it's great,
I love that. It's almost like, I mean, you're by existing in that way in your professional environment, you're giving other people permission to also bring in their curiosities and their
Yeah,
playfulness and their artistic
yeah,
sensibilities. Maybe, yeah, I love that.
yeah, yeah.
And it's so important not to, like, just to exist. I think not to impose, but to exist, because then people will come to you. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. If they just have the opportunity to try something, and if they see the joy, for example, that it brings me, or the way that I'm speaking about it, and it sparks, you said curiosity is such an important word in my dictionary.
yeah,
And so, yes, I like people to be curious like me, like them to experiment with things. They don't have to like it. You could experiment with something and decide, you know what? No, I don't like it, but you gave it a try, you know?
yeah.
So, yeah, yeah, that's
Amazing.
cool.
Yeah, I wanted to relate to your recent interview with Rana Asfour in the Marcas Review, because you spoke about achieving a state of flow on your daily walks, based on Susan Cain's book. So I got the book off my bookshelf and I have it with me here because I love that book and I love reading about the state of flow.
Great book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. And I wanted to see if there is any correlation between um the professional world and the artistic world or artistic sensibilities, because I think a lot, when personally at least, when I think about a state of flow, I think about it in the context of the arts. A musician who is she is able to just create music or to sing and is in that space, or a painter who just forgets the world around them. And I think that's how it was described in the book as well, the state of flow, as where you're detaching from the social environment around you and you just exist.
Mm.
Do you think it is possible to achieve a state of flow in a professional setting as well?
I think it is. Yes. It doesn't feel the same. And again, I'm speaking completely about myself. I'm not like, I haven't done any research on flow. I'm not an expert on flow. It's just when I read that, passage in the book, it just resonated so much with me. So, because when I'm writing a poem, or when I'm making a drawing or a painting, it's not the end result that I'm interested in. I love the process of coming up with the words to translate whatever it is, the light or the bird or what I'm feeling or whatever. It's almost like it's like me against me, I'm in this zone where the world is there, but it's almost like I'm in this bubble. Yeah. And there are things coming out, and it just feels good when I find the right word or the right color or the right combination of things. And it's being created right here at my fingertips. It's almost like I don't want it to end. I don't want this painting to be finished. I don't want the poem to end. I know when it ends, when that flow is interrupted. You can't force it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yes, the result is satisfying. I'm not saying like, okay, wow, I'm happy I wrote this poem, or I'm happy I produced this. But it's the process. That's the part that I'm after, And it's very fulfilling. And it's, now when you put it in a work context. Now, if your work is your passion, that's different. Like, I'm not gonna pretend that my work is my passion. I'm passionate about it because I like to do good work. This is just me feeling the responsibility. But when and like, I work from home. I'm at home right now. I am working. I mean, I'm not working right now, but I will continue to work. And I was working before, and my flow or my productivity and my feeling of satisfaction of doing my work when I'm here in this environment is much more flowy than when I was at work. not having to commute, not having the stress, not having the distractions of people around me, not having to dress a certain way or be confined. It's a bit rigid. Yeah, the workplace, there's a rigidity to it because there's certain protocols and it's corporate and whatever. But when I'm focusing on my work here and it's quiet and I have the home to myself and I'm answering all my emails and I may start at 6 a.m. I'm not bound by working hours, right? I'm working on my own terms and I'm working in my own surroundings and I'm working outdoors now. Yeah, I do get into a state of flow because, okay, I'm getting things done and it feels good to get things done off your list. Not art, but it's there. I'm in the zone. Yes, I have everything that I need and I'm getting things done and I'm answering people and there is flow. There is definitely a sense of flow. It's just a different kind of flow.
Yeah, no, but the way you're describing it resonates with me so much, especially when you talked about the flow and in creating in terms of an artistic sense and enjoying the process. Because when I was still practicing theater, that was like I loved the process of being in the rehearsal room and working with the actors and working with the designers and solving problems and figuring out how things change when you make a tiny little change in some other spaces. And that it reminded me of working on events with the art gallery, for example, and how much I enjoy that process too. The process of researching, of thinking about the audience, what do you want them to take away, communicating with the speakers, thinking about the process, the flow of the event itself, and then being in it and guiding people and instructing assistants, that this whole kind of machinery.
Yes.
That process, I enjoyed that process so much. And I think maybe taking the big idea of the flow away and just focusing on the enjoyment of the process could be another way to think about it, because that it resonated with me so much when you talked about it that way. Yeah. And there is this feeling of loss that you get when either the state of flow is interrupted or the process ends, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, yes. But I think that's what makes it precious. I mean, maybe if you're in a state of flow 24 hours a day, you'd be like, would that be flow? It wouldn't be flow anymore. It'd just be life or what. So it's there. It could last an hour. It could be a couple of hours. It could be 5 minutes, but it's precious. And you know it. You know when you're in the zone. It feels a certain way. And you know when you're not in a certain flow. And you get to differentiate between them and you get to appreciate that state. And you kind of crave it. You crave to achieve it and you look for other ways to achieve it. It's a constant search for the flow.
someone else, Michael Liddick, and one of the other people I talked to for the podcast, he described it as walking the line and finding the balance of the line. And when you're not on the line, but you're constantly in search of it, almost like a dance.
Yes. That's a very cool way of describing it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You already talked about this a little bit with your daily walks, which I love that ritual and that practice. Are there any other ways in which you're nourishing your artistic sensibilities?
Yes, I love speaking with artists, visiting artist studios, visiting art fairs, galleries. I mean, even browsing online to look at what's out there in the art world and looking at, watching people produce art or listening to people talking about art. That has really opened up my mind, and it keeps opening up. Every time I see something, it's like, oh, that's cool. That's, it's nice to see how other artists have pushed boundaries, because you're constantly trying to open up. Like I feel like I'm still trying there's more that I can do, and I'm finding my space, and each little thing helps me open the wall a little bit more, or remove it, or move it away from me a little bit more, so I have a bit more space to move. So that's definitely for me huge. Certain people, certain experiences, certain stories that I hear also are, source of inspiration, or they move certain things in me that will spark the curiosity to pursue something, or to try something, to experiment. Material, I mean, especially nowadays with, I'm not going to claim to be like this huge sustainability expert again. I do care about the environment, and I kind of use art in a way to raise awareness, and within my own little audience, about the environment, by recycling plastic into sculptures, and by using, I don't throw away the packaging material, the box that comes in the Amazon delivery, and I transform it. Because, so for me, I'm much more sensitive now to materials. So when I see something, I have this need to, like, I want to touch it. I want to feel what it feels like, or what can I do with this? So it's also materials that I find around me that spark up this sensibility and this curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. I want to ask too, if so, I'm going to make this a double question. So if
Mhm.
and you can decide if you want to answer both or only one of them. If someone has an artistic practice and they want to move into more of a professional space, how can they position themselves, or what can they do in order to do that successfully? The other side of that coin, how can organizations or corporations allow for artistic sensibilities to exist more in their spaces and their cultures?
Okay. To answer your first question, it requires a lot of persistence to break through the art world. Okay. And actually, it's not just the art world. If you're looking for a job, right, you have to be, it's a competitive market out there. There are lots of people with very similar qualifications seeking an appointment somewhere, if we want to draw like a little bit of a comparison. In the art world, it's not enough to just say, oh, look how much I produce, or look how much talent I have. I don't know if anyone actually says that. It's not that. You need to make connections. I think the key is connections. You connect with artists. You connect with people. Let people see your work. They don't have to buy it from you, but connecting from people and having a continuous interaction with people about your work. First of all, it helps you talk about it more. It allows you to talk about it more professionally. It's almost like practice, you learn more about yourself when you talk about it, but being on the scene, you have to connect and interact. It's not easy. You don't always get the chance to meet artists, but with social media, I must admit, the access is there. If you're persistent enough, you could actually get to meet a certain artist, no matter how remote they are from you, or they not even be in the same country or whatever. Connect, get people to interact with you, go to shows, go to art fairs, go to speak to people. There's quite a bit of maybe rejection, if that's the word, in the beginning. You cannot let it stop you. I faced it. It's not like, I've tried to talk to people in the beginning when I was trying to establish something for myself, and they can be a bit brutal sometimes. You have to take it and say, that's fine, it's okay, because at the end of the day, I do it for me. Yes, I want to show my work. Yes, I like to have an exhibition, because that allows me to give the message that I'm giving, right? But it never stops me. It's not like, oh, this is too hard, or this is not going to work, or this is because if your motivation is purely commercial or purely fame or glory, it's not the right motivation. It won't get you to a lot of places. It has to be really driven by the insight. Like, I'm doing this no matter what. Like, seriously, if I never ever do an exhibition again in my life, I will never stop. I will make this for me because I have to, because that's when I flow. That's where I am. That's where I be, you know. Without it, and when I think back now on years when I was having kids and I didn't have time to paint, and I think about it now and I think, how? I don't know how I survived. How did I survive that time without having this creative outlet? So if it's in you enough, the opportunity will present itself. It's a matter of time, and it's a matter of, you have, you know, it's two ways. You can't have that perception where, oh, I expect you to listen to me. You have to listen to me because I'm an artist. No, you earn that, you know. You earn that by being there in these at openings and talking to people and sharing and maybe helping, or, you know, sharing, so that then you're accepted into the tribe, I guess.
Yeah, the idea of
I don't
this.
know if this makes sense, but really it's not easy. But if it's inside you, somehow the line that you're talking about will present itself, and you'll make the right connection that will get you what you want.
Yeah.
But it just takes patience, persistence, and passion. 3 P's.
I love that. 3 P's: patience, persistence,
The 3
passion.
P's.
And then the C is community, and the idea
And
of sharing
community.
and
Yeah.
connection. Yeah.
Sharing. You can't be selfish about it. You can't have expectations like, give me. No. What can I give you? What can I give this community? Can I do a workshop? Can I volunteer? Can I teach something? Can I, you know?
Yeah.
And then someone will notice. Someone will take notice.
Yeah. And that line will present itself, like you said.
The line will present itself. Now, your second question about organizations, and that's it's a trickier one to answer.
Yeah.
And it's something that, you know, especially now with these new generations, the younger ones who are creative, they're different. They're different kind of employee, you know. I mean, I even think of my kids, you know, I try to imagine them in a corporate setting. And it's difficult because they're used to expressing themselves, you know. They want to be heard, they want to have an opinion, they have an opinion.
Yeah.
But how do you unleash creativity in an organization? And you need that, because now the world is all about innovation, right? Innovation is creativity and practice. It's curiosity. How do you spark that? Again, curiosity is such a big word for me, and I'm trying to now embed it into a lot of the L&D stuff that we do. There has to be a way to allow people to take risks on their own. You need to allow that space. It can't. Yes, you have to have policies and procedures and everything, but you have to make sure that those don't end up stifling people. You need to be able to identify, give people a chance to shine. You don't have to be at the top of the pyramid to be given the space to share your ideas. So there needs to be an outlet. And there are so many channels now, whether it's like through group chats or online platforms where people can share ideas more in an unofficial, in a less corporate way. You know, you need to discover people's talents, and we do that to a certain extent. And when you engage with the younger generations and organize, they're very good at getting people to speak and engage and communicate. So there's a huge role there for like the youth to get that going, because, you know, they have the energy. You need to get people's energy flowing. There's that word again.
Yeah.
there is no one way to do it, but you need to find out people's passions, because their passions, even though they may not be directly related to their work, they can somehow, in an indirect way, have something to add, have something new to show. It could be sport, it could be action, it could be, because those kinds of extracurricular activities, ideas, they spark up, ideas. They make connections. Oh, suddenly I find out there's another artist somewhere where I work, and now let's talk. And how it's not tangible. It's not like 1 + 1 is 2, or do this and that and then you get this result. It's so much more abstract. But you have to allow people a certain space, take a little risk here and there, to take ownership of something that they do, to share ideas. I think a lot of the time people hesitate. I have this idea, maybe it's a silly idea, or maybe no one's going to listen, or maybe I don't have authority. So it's a lot of it's quite complex, but it's doable. It is. Some people take the initiative, like, I came up with this idea for the mindfulness coloring. I'm sure there are other people somewhere out there who have ideas as well. They want to engage and do something, maybe through walking. I've done walks for Tawazun, and it gets you moving. And when you're moving, you're engaging, your mind and the body. And I don't know if I've answered that question.
No, you did. It
Difficult
is,
question to answer.
It is. I know it's one of the hardest ones. But it is so complex, but I think you put it in a very simple, achievable way, which is that creating spaces for people to take risks. Because I think it is from the outside, or as someone who wants to connect maybe their passion with their professional practice, that is a risky space, because your passion is personal to you, and then bringing that into a corporate environment or a business environment means you're revealing a part of yourself to other people, and that, if there's not that space for risk, or a space where you feel that you can do that you won't be rejected, or that you will be accepted even with that part of yourself. I think it's so important, because only then can people say, okay, yes, let me try this. Let me try having the conversation this way, knowing what I know from my artistic practice or from my mindfulness practice. Let me try to bring that into the conversation, or let me just try to do a task this other way. I want to try it. I want to see. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But yeah, I think that risk is so important, and thank you for bringing that up, because this is the first time so far that has brought into the conversation. So yeah, it's
cool.
such an important.
I thought I was all over the place.
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
all right, we're
good.
coming up on time, so I want to ask you the last question, which is a personal one. What are your milestones, and what intentions are you setting for them?
I don't know if I can call them milestones, but I just want to keep doing. I want to keep feeding my curiosity. I want to keep experimenting. I want to, so I started playing the cello, or learning to play the cello, last year. And again, it's not because I'm going to become a musician or anything, but that somehow it's there, and it's in my life, and the walking is in my life, and I want to hopefully continue to do that. And the art, and I have a lot of ideas that I haven't had the time to implement yet. So I'm just going with the flow. I think I want to, I'm not going to pretend that I have like this big thing that I'm trying to achieve. As long as I keep doing what I'm doing, and keep being able to share what I do, that's it, really.
That's beautiful.
I just hope that it continues, yeah. That's all I
Feeding
want.
that curiosity. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to keep being able to feed my curiosity. Yeah. I want to just keep experimenting with things and trying new things and surprising myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Noura. It was wonderful to have this conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for inviting me, and it's been a pleasure
Same.
talking to you and listening to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of The Arts in Business. Episodes are being released weekly, so make sure to follow or subscribe. I hope you have a great week ahead of you.